Hi, everybody. This is Mark Kaczynski for another episode of the Fractional CAO. And wow, am I pleased to have a guest on to talk to me today. His name's Jay Alice from a company called Alsco. Jay, really pleased for you to take some time to be with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Always good to be with you.
All right. So I think the theme that I really want to get to today is around the concept of action from analytics. So how do we do something with data? And I guess by way of introducing the concept, there's a couple of things I wanted to sort of highlight. The first is I think it's very easy to lose sight with just how much money we spend in a typical organization on our people. Um, Particularly in comparison to what do we spend on IT generally and on data specifically, right? And so the data I found Googling around is it's somewhere between 15 and 30% of a by revenue of cost that we spend on our people in a typical organization. So if it's $100 million organization, multiply that by 30%. That's about what the human resource load is, compared to IT, which is more like 4 to 6%. So it's a fraction of the people, which I think is at some level common sense maybe, but on the other hand, it's easy to lose sight of that, right? Particularly as data honks, as we're really talking about the investment we're making in data. So given that the people are ultimately those that are going to have to take the action, short of getting into AI where the computer magically takes some action on behalf of the organization, people have to do it, right? So what has data historically done for these people? Well, it's been a long road, as you know, right? And the typical organization today has gone through some version of this journey where you look at classic reporting, if you go all the way back to the Cognos MicroStrategy days, where the reports are put up in front of the humans and say, there you go, this is what's happening. Why is it happening? What will happen? And taking action, that's all up to you. You figure it out. So, as an industry, we're like, okay, well, we can do better. Let's move to analytics, where we actually describe the why associated with what's going on in the business, and then ultimately predictive analytics, trying to look out into the future and say what will happen. But even there, and you can, I think, Jay, you can take that as far as even machine learning, right? So let's bring it to the contemporary, sexy world of ML. It's still about analysis. It's still about providing information to the human, and then it's up to the human. It's up to the manager to figure out, okay, what do I actually do with this? And I think the beautiful part about the story we're going to get into with you today, having to do with our engagement of clean data here at Alsco, is it's hard to do, right? So if you think about the typical corporation that has a CIO and a whole bunch of SQL programmers, and you have Tableau report writers and all that, are they the ones that typically organize and ultimately affect behavior in the greater company? Do they quote unquote tell the salespeople what to do? Do they tell the factory managers what to do? Well, not really. CIOs and that whole organization is more about providing information. Some have a CDO, a chief data officer, but I would argue even there, it's analysis and information, and it's really up to somebody else to figure out what do I do with this stuff. So I just take a unique perspective, I suppose, but I find it to be this role called the CAO, the Chief Analytics Officer. And for those organizations that don't have one, get one, just like you guys did. And I think the role of the analytics officer is somebody that can be close to a business and actually affect behavior. So it's not just hey, look at this cool data. It's up to you to figure out. So that's the opening. Jay, maybe let's just start with who the hell's Alsco anyway, right? What is this company all about that you're involved in?
Yeah, well, good. A lot of good stuff in there that we can get through in this for sure, Mark. Alsco, we're the most forward-leaning data company on planet Earth. No, I'm kidding. We we're actually a uniform and linen rental company. So we have a huge fleet of trucks and team members out on the road that are delivering, picking up, placing uniforms and linen rental all across the globe.
Okay, and you as an executive there, and you have a day job that I'm sure is very interesting. But the thing that I'm most intrigued with is you are the chairman of a data committee that really reaches across the entire organization. What is that, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, well, as with most things in the corporate world, you identify that you have a bucket of problems. You try to prioritize or triage those, and you get together, and everyone has an agenda, and hopefully you have some alignment. Not always, but it was clear to us that we had a lot of data from a lot of different tools. Some of them are very, very old. Some of them are newer. Some of them I might even call pretty good, some of them bad, but all of that really wasn't super relevant. It was we have all of this data and we're using it to show a report that reflects the past. And instead of using these mountains of data that we have to make really informed decisions, put patterns together to try to help us shape what we do, to learn, to, you'd mentioned, I'm sure we'll get into some of the predictive pieces that we can use the data that we have. But we didn't know where we wanted to go, but we knew we had a problem. We knew we had an opportunity with all of this data. And we knew we were also very fragmented across the globe when it came to data, including how we talk about data in our communication across the globe. So we formed the committee to try to tackle this opportunity, and a lot of high-powered executives in a room that all, throwing things at the wall, myself included, in what we should focus on. This is the most important thing. That's the most important thing. And there were a lot of really good proposals, ideas, suggestions. What became really clear to me and a couple of other key stakeholders was we really could use an outsider's perspective to come in and kind of not bring all of the baggage of their day to day. I'm in operations, or I'm in sales, or I'm in finance, or whatever, and cut through all of that mud and say, what is ultimately, if you work on this, it'll change your business, and you can all agree about it. It was clear that we needed something like that, and we weren't going to get there likely on our own, and that's where we found you guys, and it's been a really good journey so far.
Yeah, well, I certainly echo that from my point of view. And when you say you wanted some outside-in thinking, you didn't specifically think about a fractional CAO. You didn't have that kind of precision in your mind. But knowing now what Clean Data is up to, in fact, your IT director, CIO Corey, he says there's kind of two things that we bring to the table. One is we seem to figure out how to facilitate asking the right questions, and then once the questions are on the table, help then obviously facilitating where the answers are gonna come from. But that's just, I guess, an assertion on Corey's part. How did you think about the resource other than outside in thinking? What was it that you were kind of looking for, and did it actually play out that way?
Yeah, well, the short version is it played out better than expected, which is good. And here's some of the reasons why. I mean, I think a lot of companies can resonate with. You mentioned it earlier. You have an IT department. Could be one person. Could be could be 15 people. Whatever it is. Ours is pretty big. We're global company, over 17,000 employees, so it's pretty substantial. But that IT department is really focused on supporting the different departments and the different technologies that we have. So just, fielding questions, handling reports from executives, they're not really focused most of the time on what I would call kind of business intelligence, analytics, backing up and saying, how can we really impact the business with data? It's more, how can we, support the organization's data needs? And so just looking at it differently, which is exactly what you guys did, was a huge help. And then the other thing, we knew we wanted a consultant. So normally that means good thought and theory and, thinking through problems and maybe organizing a strategy forward. What was really good to have that we didn't expect is the execution component of it. So here you've got this busy IT department I mentioned. Okay, we laid out a good strategy. Well, those were good conversations. We have this really valuable objective we all want to focus on. Okay, now what? Now busy people go make this happen. It becomes difficult if you do it internally, and maybe you even get it wrong. Whereas you guys really did the execution uh, for us, and you let us come alongside you so that we learn, and we were able to dedicate some of those IT folks to learning how this process works, so that we could potentially be self-sufficient one day, or at least more so. So all of those factors put together have really helped us, not only achieve an actionable result and impact that the original goal, but also those other tangent goals have been really beneficial.
Yeah, good. Well, back to Corey, your CIO. I think he's extraordinary in his self awareness, in the sense that he understands he's a busy boy. There's a lot of priorities in the company. I mean, IT is a huge thing, right? You think about security and all this stuff. Um, and I don't think I've ever come across a client that is so favorable and cooperative when it comes to the IT department, right? Sometimes there's a concept of we're threatened, and we you're making us look bad, and we should be doing this, and why haven't we been doing this, and a little bit of a blame game thing. And maybe it's because your senior management doesn't view it that way, right? Everybody loves Corey. There's a concept that says, look, everybody just calm down. CIOs have a tough job, and being the expert on action oriented analytics may not be in their wheelhouse on any given day. Or do you have the resources, or do you have the priority to make it happen? But he's been extraordinary, and I guess the question is, did you see that coming? Because I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, I did not see that coming, and I am one of the fans of Corey, as you mentioned. No doubt about it, he does a lot for us. But having dealt with multiple IT directors in my career, I know the personality you're talking about, and a lot of times a new cutting edge consultant or tool or whatever comes in and says, well, you're doing all these things wrong, and you've got to use this instead of that, and I would say your approach fit with our approach really well, as we want to learn, we want to solve these problems, and let's not change the world in a day. Let's just, if we want to use certain tools, there's value to not changing the entire system, whatever. Okay, let's make sure we still get to the goal here, and work together. And I think that helped tremendously. And that, along with you guys being seen as a resource really quickly, so not only not a threat, but from the whole IT department, a tremendous resource from the network, tools that we could potentially be exposed to, and obviously speed to the market. The value there helped the whole IT department. Corey, for sure, I think, see this is going to be easy for us. This is definitely going to help us, not hurt us.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, let's segue a bit to the journey that Alsco has been on, that you, as the lead of the data committee, obviously are seeing through your cockpit, right? You're out the flying the airplane, looking out the window and looking at all your knobs and gauges, for watching the business mature here, right? And one way to think about maturity is that classic reporting to analytics to predictive analytics. Are you on that journey, and kind of where are you?
We are on that journey for sure, and we're kind of going back and forth a little, right? I think that's sort of how you make progress, is um, maybe improving where you currently are, while also pulling yourself forward to that next step, layer, component, whichever it is. So we are definitely on that journey. I think we're migrating from definitely data for in the present. We're starting to understand more about why things happen, which is still looking backwards. But with some of the things we're working on, we are now talking about using the predictive piece more and more. And how do we do that? And what does that project look like? How can we design a project around it? And that's been really fun. It's also been really impactful to see one of those now come to full launch and be implemented, and how quickly we can take actions to well, in this case, save revenue. I think that's something that'll resonate with everybody. It's been fascinating, and I'm glad to be making progress there.
Yeah. Well, and revenue is something I think most companies, unless you're a nonprofit or something, I mean, even then, credit unions, they care. So, revenue has lots of has lots of elements to it, right? There's new customer acquisition, there's retaining the customers that you've already got, there's upselling potentially a market basket thing, there's price elasticity issues, there's all kinds of stuff, and then of course paying attention to the threats from the outside, right? So what are the market dynamics where I'm sitting here on my rotary phone and all of a sudden the iPhone shows up and it's like, whoa, that's a completely different thing. So I say that rather crude, sort of reference, but because everybody can relate to it. But it's really true. I think all businesses have a sense of looking within what's going on and how do we navigate our future. But we also have to pay attention to what's on the outside. And maybe one of the best clues we get from the outside is from the customers themselves, right? So do we listen to our customers?
Yeah. I think we in particular tried to think for our customer versus really seek to listen to the customer, and the data can really help you there, and sort through your own biases of, well, I know what the customer wants, so if I know if I get really good at delivering it, we're good, right? Versus, well, what did the customer say, and how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are they, and how are we measuring that? What is that data being plugged into, and can we make them happier? Can we keep them longer? Or in the case that we're working on now, really cool is, how do we use that information to tell us we need to go talk to that customer because they're showing indications that they may actually be leaving us soon or quitting?
Mhm.
Which, that's been a really fun exercise.
Well, that's a classic predictive analytics thing, right? If you're trying to forecast into the future here how customers are going to behave, um, I think that's the analysis. The question back to action is what do you do about it, right? So we can do this one of two ways, as we've talked about this throughout this project, Jay, as you know. But we can do this one of two ways. We can just put information in front of everybody and go, well, there you go, have fun with that, right? There's 19 tabs in the spreadsheet and it's all there, and knock yourself out. Or we can direct behavior, more action oriented, and particularly, I think in a company like yours, and you're not uncommon, where you don't have technical people all over the company, right? This is not Google. This is not Apple. You have very mainstream operators that don't spend their day in a computer necessarily. How do you direct them? How do you help them with the least amount of barrier as possible for them to actually do something, what I call bend the future, right? Is a little bit of a cheesy term, but predictive analytics says this is what's likely to happen. Well, I don't like what's likely to happen. How do I bend it over here? Which I think by definition is an action orientation.
Yeah, that's certainly right. And you kind of hit the nail on the head with our industry, as you can imagine. A lot of employees, that we have operations, we're processing linen, making it's a reactive environment. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of fires, and I think corporations can definitely deal with that. And you have a role within that corporation. You become a firefighter pretty quickly, versus the predictive analytics really saying, sure, I'm sure there's a bunch of fires out there, but here's what I'm telling you is happening right now that you can go and take particular actions on to change the outcome. That ultimately has a much bigger impact on the business than just fighting the fires that popped up reactively.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been I think it's been rewarding for me to see skeptics. When I say skeptics, they weren't data haters necessarily, but they were just a bit skeptical to turn into like, whoa, this can actually work, right? And I've seen that with people on the ground out in the field. I've seen that with your execs, CEO, CFO, CXO kind of people, and anybody in between. Again, it's a bit of a reflection question for you, but did you see this playing out the way it has? Right? Were there a lot of skeptics early in the game, and do you see the momentum, kind of evolving like I do?
Well, hopefully nobody saw me early on in the closet with my fingers crossed, just hoping this all, worked out. Worked out. Getting a consultant originally, and now what's become this fractional kind of CAO relationship that we have that's working really well. Um, no, I mean it was a toss up at best as to how that was going to play out. Where people are going to be even open to the outside feedback, information, questions, the whole deal, and I think again, kudos to you and the team of being really, really, listening well, really trying to understand, articulate, help us get to kind of where we say our goal is, but we may not be mentally ready to get there. You've helped us all get there and see the value, make it simple when we can make it and move fast. And I think all of those features have really helped at, like you said, at every level. That's when you know you're really hitting it with the data well, is that it's not just a room of executives that are happy, or it's not just a room of people that do this every day that are happy or need a certain report. It's really bringing value to the organization through multiple layers of users, and driving impact, and that's when everybody gets sold.
Yeah. Well, and again, back to trying to analyze a bit like why, what are we doing that's really affecting that good? I think there's two effects. I think the first is it's got relevance in terms of the business, right? So this is not a passive stir your peas around your plate. Let's go get some more data for the sake of getting more data. It's very much driven to business outcomes that matter, right? So revenue is, it doesn't get much more relevant than that. And then I think again, you cross that with this concept of actionable. So I've got relevant data that I can take action on. Now all of a sudden it matters, right? And this is where I think the data industry generally has perhaps gotten a bad rap over time when there's so much money, so many resources, so much technology that's gone towards data projects over the last 20 years. But yet you go ask the typical salesperson in the company or some operator, a marketing leader, even an exec, and say, are you getting your money's worth out of all this investment? And the question can come back as crudely as, well, I don't know what those guys do all day, but they're not doing anything for me, right? And I think that's a shame. That's a real sad statement on misplaced resources over time. And again, the the data industry has such a hype machine, right? Today we're going through ML and AI. It's its own trajectory of, doesn't everybody see it? Data is going to take over the world. Well, yeah, kind of. But I think for the typical organization that's dealing with, as you call it, operational firefighting and just the realities of running the business, to the extent that data analysis is over there, or some in some other department, or the stuff I get is a passive report or some basic analysis that isn't really relevant to my job, then it just kind of gets discounted. And I think that's where I'm just wildly enthusiastic. You and the other folks I'm working with at Alsco, you really do get on board quickly with, let's make this relevant and let's make this actionable. And before you know it, you've got this just enthusiasm now that's starting to explode.
Yeah, I think there's two key things in there that uh, you guys do well, that fit well, and I think will fit well, resonate with a lot of companies, help solve problems that are just real problems for companies like ours, bigger or smaller. And that is even an internal business intelligence unit. Uh, I haven't found that they still really have the autonomy to challenge some status quo or ideas. And still seems like it becomes, if it's internalized, it's sort of subservient to some agenda somewhere, call it the loudest person in the room or what, highest ranking,
Well,
whatever.
it's a power thing too, right?
Sure. Yeah. And, you guys, you want to keep the business, you want to keep this relationship going. And the best way to do that, not, not just to make us happy today, but to deliver something that will impact the business and do it relatively quickly. And so you guys are just laser focused on that and saying, okay, you love for this whole thing to go 3 years, and we've got a lot of ideas on what that would entail, but let's have something within 3 months. What would that be that we can point to that we all feel really good about it? If we get to a certain point with data, a project, a model, analytics, everyone would say that is a huge win. I don't know, that's a stretch, and you guys go after it and keep delivering it. And I think that's also very difficult to do with an internal group, with again all of the distractions that you have from the day to day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, outside in thinking as we started the interview here is is very powerful in its own way, right? We get to ask dumb questions that the inside people wouldn't necessarily ask. They don't want to be exposed to, well, maybe I should have known the answer to that, or now I'm picking a fight with this other person or this manager, right? We can just ask the questions, and then make recommendations that say, well, why wouldn't we do action X? And there's a little bit of a facilitation game there. Not that we're the HR department. It's not like that, but there is a facilitation to get to a better place. And when we do, then these things they start to repeat and they start to build on each other.
Yeah, well, you guys have several times aggregated feedback across multiple departments. A lot of silos in a company this size. You've done it globally, which has been a big deal for us. And you keep coming back to kind of, well, we talked to 10 people and they all said a lot of different things, but these are the three things that kept coming up from all of those individuals. And we even took a look at maybe what kind of impact a few of these would have, so that we can make a decision as to, well, that will be the biggest likelihood of success, biggest impact, help us learn the most moving forward. So yeah, let's go after that one.
Okay, cool. Well, Jay, let me leave it there. You've been a real joy to work with, and certainly appreciate your time here to produce this video. So I'll wish all of you watching a good day, and we'll see you again on another episode of the Fractional CAO. Bye bye.